You are now watching the amazing Mets Pregame Show with your hosts, Rob and CP.
Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets! Let's go Mets!
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets Pregame Show right here on my channel and Chris's channel. I will be going solo today as Chris had other things that he had to do and couldn't make it today, but you got me and the hat back, ready to go and talk about our goddamn New York Mets. And Luz, thank you for the belated birthday wish. And sorry I haven't been with you guys over the last close to a week. I showed up maybe once or twice over the last week. I went on vacation. It was my birthday week, so I just tried to, get back to New York, see some friends, see some coworkers, and all that fun stuff. So I'm very, very glad that you guys hung in there, held it down with Chris and others during this tough road trip for the New York Mets. And unfortunately for the New York Mets, they were a no-show in Seattle, as a lot of people called it sleepless in Seattle with the New York Mets, as they only scored one run in that 3-game series, and over the course of a 4-game losing streak, only have scored 5 runs in those 4 games as they come back home, and the offense was kind of lax against the Oakland Athletics, losing 9-4 yesterday, and it wasn't a good game, right? Blackburn didn't pitch well. Jose Buto came in to relieve him, didn't pitch well. The offense, yes, they did score 4 runs, but it never felt like they were going to get back. It didn't feel like they were going to win that ball game yesterday, and it just ended up being a bad loss. And coming back home, everybody thought, all right, guys, let's go. Let's get it together. Let's pick up the pieces coming back home for a very, very important home stretch as we get the A's, the Marlins, and the Orioles home before we head back to the West Coast with the Arizona and Padres, and, of course, others that we're going to have to face to round up this last 2 weeks of the month of August. But we are at game 120 of the season. What does that mean, everybody? That means there is 42 games left to go in the season. Yes, I love to talk about how many games are left. Yes, because of the fact that we are getting down to the end of the season, right? I know we got a month and a half left of the season, but it comes really, really quickly. We are in the dog days of summer, ladies and gentlemen. Every team lose 60, every team wins 60. If you're looking at the record right now, the Mets have 61 wins to 58 losses, right? They haven't hit that 60 loss total as of yet. Again, teams have their playoff lives defined by the last 42 games of the season. Almost 99.9% of teams lose 60 and win 60. So it's the final 42 games of the season that determine if you're a playoff team or you are not. And the Mets are exactly at that point right now where, listen, if they go 500 the rest of the way, right? They go 21-21. That is 82 wins, right? That is 82 wins. If you look at it that way, is that going to be enough to get a third wild card? Probably not at this point. I still think it's going to take about between 84 and 86 wins to make the wild card. It could be a little less. It could be 82. It could be 83, depending on what goes on with the Braves, as well as the Padres seem to just took off from everybody else. Like there always was a chance, and this was including the Mets, by the way, a couple of weeks ago. If they went on a 2.5 week stretch of just outstanding baseball, they could have ran away with it, right? Not too long ago, 2 weeks ago, the Padres weren't even in the playoff spot, and now they're the number 1 wild card team, and ended up being, the number 2 wild card spot, with Arizona. They're actually 15 games over 500. It's crazy to think, but it's just, it's really amazing how things turn around so quickly. And this is why I tell you can't have extended losing streaks. Right now, 4 is kind of the max where I'm starting to get nervous a little bit. And I say that because I'm always big on extended losing streaks, right? You can have a 3-game losing streak and survive, right? Even a 4-game losing streak is kind of pushing the envelope a little bit, but you still got that opportunity to turn it around, stop the losing streak, and start a winning streak, right? If you get to the 5-6 game losing streak, now you're kind of in a tailspin. You kind of lost a couple of series in a row. You got swept at least once, possibly twice, and you cannot let that happen. If you're trying to compete, if you're trying to stay in this race, right? Luckily for the Mets, before their losing streak, they did have like a 2.5 game lead from the teams behind them, where you could say, all right, they have a little bit of a cushion to lose a couple in a row and still remain that last spot before the third wild card. Now it's getting really, really close. So the Mets got to get back on their winning ways. You're back home. You're facing an Oakland team that, listen, you saw yesterday, they have offense, right? They are not the White Sox, all right, guys? Nobody is the White Sox. The Oakland A's are an abominable, terrible organization, but their offense can be a little bit, hit or miss. They either score a lot of runs or they score a run, right? They did it to the Phillies. They did it to a lot of good teams where the A's step up against good teams, which is amazing to me because you don't, look at them on paper, you're like, they're not really that good, but they got a lot of guys with a lot of power. They got a lot of guys that are solid offensive guys. Like, they got a pretty good amount of guys in that lineup where you're like, they're not a bad lineup, but it comes down to the pitching with them. And it comes down with everything else with them. But at the same time, the New York Mets need to beat the Oakland A's. It's just, that's it, right? They walked into Seattle prior to finishing up the road trip, right? With the weird West Coast trip where they had to go West Coast, come back to, one game with the Cardinals in the Midwest and go back to the West Coast, go to Colorado, and then you go either further northwest to Seattle to end the homestand and then come back home. Listen, it was a tough stretch. We all talked about it prior to the West Coast trip. It is going to be a tough trip. It was, I would say, a mediocre trip, West Coast trip at best, right? It could have been a little bit better, but it could have been a lot worse, right? We could have lost that game in St. Louis, where a lot of people basically went into that game thinking the Mets were going to lose that game, right? They didn't do that, right? They played pretty solid against Colorado, and I think they had no energy left for that Seattle series, and it showed. The offense only scored 1 run. The pitching wasn't very good. Seattle, who never scores runs, scored a ton of runs against the New York Mets. But if you really look at the bottom line and the stat line and the box scores of those games, look when the Mariners scored those runs, right? The Mets had opportunities in game 1 and 2 to score runs in that game. Quintana pitched well until the final inning where he got taken out. The Mets were still in that ball game all the way up until the 7th inning. They did not score. You can't kill a pitcher that needs to be basically perfect when your offense does not do the job or doesn't help out your pitching. Same thing with Minaya the next day. What happened? He pitched pretty good. There was only 4 runs given up in the ball game. You got to score runs here. And we talked about this. The offense was going to carry this team, specifically through this West Coast trip. We needed the offense to step up, and they did not. And this goes for the Alonsos of the world. This goes for the Nimmo, who is basically non-existent over the last month of the season. Brandon Nimmo has been absolutely garbage, right? I talked about this with Nimmo many, many times, right? I am one of these guys that have criticized Brandon Nimmo before. Brandon Nimmo, when he is not doing well, he is ice cold. That is the problem with Brandon Nimmo. This was the problem with him even when he had good seasons. The fact of the matter is, Brandon Nimmo has ice cold stretches that last a month or more where he is nowhere to be found. This is an issue when you have a lineup that is supposed to be very deep. You can't keep on relying on the bottom of the order. This is the problem, right? Lindor gets his, 2 hits a game. He gets on base. Lindor has been pretty decent, right? Has he been as hot as he was in late May into June and July? No. But Martinez, nowhere to be found. Nimmo, nowhere to be found. Alonso has been better, but not good enough. Where is that power we've been looking for from Pete Alonso, right? We need more from him as well, right? I mean, Jesse Winker is your cleanup hitter right now because Alonso's not doing the job. Martinez is not doing the job. Nimmo's not doing the job. When you have 3 out of your 4 top guys in your lineup not doing the job, guess what, guys? You're probably not going to win. And that is the problem that we continue to fall into, because now we have to rely on your 6, 7, and 8 guy, or even night guy in this fact, where Alvarez, who's been basically a nothing offensively this year. And I go back to the same thing when it comes to main guys in this lineup. We were projecting Alvarez, and very easily, I might add, Alvarez and Pete Alonso to have around 65 to 70 home runs combined. They'll be lucky to hit 50, maybe even 45. That is a huge problem for a lineup that was expected to have those 2 guys, specifically Alonso, hitting easily 40 home runs, Alvarez to at least hit 25. That is 65 home runs right there. And the Mets, they might not even hit 50. That is a huge problem. Huge problem. And then you have Nimmo, who goes ice cold. And again, right, I've always had issues with Brandon Nimmo when it came to certain aspects of his game where I've got killed with. The big problem with Brandon Nimmo is when he's not doing well, he doesn't just slump. He goes completely ice cold, where he has bad at-bats, he strikes out a ton, doesn't take, even when Brandon Nimmo, if he would just take walks at the first 2 spots in a lineup, if you would just take walks, it would help this team tremendously. But he's not doing that either. His on base is down. His strikeouts are up. He's swinging at everything. Not have bad hand-eye coordination at this point. He's not putting the bat on the ball. Brandon Nimmo, problem when he's slumping, he goes ice cold. And you cannot have that at the top of the order. You can have a guy that slumps a little bit, come back down to earth, because, again, Nimmo was red hot. There's no middle ground with Brandon Nimmo. And that is the issue that I have, that I always have with Brandon Nimmo going back years. He doesn't have a middle ground when it comes to his offensive talent or offensive stats. It's either red hot or ice cold, right? I talk about this with Alvarez, the same thing, right? Last year, right? What was the issue? Right? His average. But he had the power. Again, when it comes to Alvarez and a catcher, right? I'm not looking for Alvarez to bat 300. I need him for power. He was supposed to be the protection behind Pete Alonso, and with Pete Alonso not hitting and Alvarez not hitting, now Mendoza has a lot of different situations when it comes to the middle of the order. Who does he trust? Where's your big RBI guy? Because it ain't Alonso, it ain't Alvarez. I mean, at this point, I'd rather put, Winker has been pretty good over the last couple of weeks, but you can't rely on Jesse Winker. He's a bench player, as I've been saying for a long time, since we got Jesse Winker. I mean, Mets fans made Jesse Winker to be Ken Griffey Jr. when he is not the same player he was with the Reds. He's a solid player. He's helping his team, but he can't be the mainstay. He can't be the main run producer in this lineup. Mendoza is forced to put Winker there because he's the only one actually hitting in the middle of the order. That is a huge problem. So with that said, the Mets better get up on the ground today. You got David Peterson on the mound. We need a hell of a start from David Peterson, right? I'm not trying to kill David Peterson here. He's had probably his last 2 starts. One of his starts wasn't good at all. The other one was okay, kept the team in the ball game, but he's been probably the most consistent since he's come back from injury with this entire rotation. He's been the most consistent. So I'm going to give David Peterson a little bit of a pass for his last couple of starts. David Peterson needs to have a badass outing today, right? He needs to give this team. Now, again, if the offense doesn't score, what is the pitching supposed to do, right? All I've seen on X and on social media is, oh, the bullpen sucks. Oh, the starters suck. The Mets don't have an ace, blah, blah, blah. When your offense scores 5 runs in 4 games, and the most of those runs came yesterday in basically a blowout game, what do you expect the pitchers to do? Do we realize that the Mariners could have scored 2 runs in every one of those games and still would have won each one of those ball games? That's an issue. The Mets have been one of the worst teams with runners in scoring position, just in front of the Chicago White Sox. That cannot happen. You can't go completely ice cold runners in scoring position. You can't. You can come back down to earth while you're red hot. That's understandable. That's expected. But you can't go from one of the hottest teams we're running the scoring position over the last 2 months to since the All-Star break, one of the worst. You're not going to win ball games like that. I don't care if you have Tom Seaver pitching. You're not going to win ball games. That is the issue that we continue to find ourselves over this stretch of games. The offense has to carry this team, right? Everybody wants to get on Severino. Everybody wants to get on this guy and that guy. Where's Brandon Sproat? Where's this guy? We need Christian Scott back, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter who's pitching. If you're scoring less than 2.5 runs per ball game over about a week and a half, guess what, guys? You are not going to win ball games. I don't give a shit who's on the mound for you. We knew the pitching for Seattle was damn good. We knew the offense had to carry that series. They were a no-show. The pitching can only do so much. And again, if you go back to the first 2 games, the Mets in the first game had it up till the 7th inning to score a couple of runs, make the game interesting. They didn't. Game 2 with Manaea, it was only 4 runs. Like, make the game interesting. That is the issue that this Mets team is finding themselves in. They're making their starter have to be perfect. And then when the bullpen comes in, they got to be even more perfect because they got to keep the game close. You can't win that way. The offense has to start hitting. And I don't care if you got to put down a bunt. I don't care if you got to move the runner over. Start playing small ball before they're starting to swing for the fences every single time, right? And I talked about this, and I said it over and over and over again. This team, this core, is going to be telling when the pressure is on, right? When they were trying to come back during the season, 11 games under 500, and JD Martinez was right, talking about nobody expects us to win. So why do we put so much pressure on ourselves to win? Just play baseball, right? When the pressure wasn't on and they were loose and having fun, it's easy to play baseball. But when now teams are coming into town or you're going to them, now it's, look at this red hot Mets team. Look at this Mets team that thinks that they're really that good. Teams are going to get up for the Mets now. Teams are not expecting the Mets to come in and it's the Mets. We're going to beat them anyway, right? Now teams are coming looking for blood. This is why you have to really pay attention when the pressure is on with this core, with this team. I've said it for 3 years now, since the end of 2022. When the pressure is there and the going gets tough, when does this team step up? When is the core step up? When does Alonso step up? When does Nimmo step up? When does Lindor step up? Shit, when does everybody that we keep on talking about year after year after year? When the pressure is on and the games matter the most and teams are out for blood against the New York Mets, when they're not just looking, look at the LOL Mets, we're going to beat them, who cares? When the pressure is on and your fans expect you to win, when the national media start talking about the Mets and you end up on ESPN more and you look like you're one of the spotlight teams nationally, where is this core? Because over the last month, Nimmo's been a no-show. Alonso has been a no-show all year. Not only the pressure with his contract, but the pressure of keeping your team afloat, putting your team on your shoulders, what Pete Alonso never does. Right? I don't care on August 17th, after the trade deadline last year, when he was one of the best offensive players in baseball. I don't care about that. Your team is out of it. Great, you pad your stats because that's what you do best. I'm sorry. The fact of the matter is, you have to be better. And yes, I'm going to call out those guys again and again and again. You got to pick it up, right? You want your big contract? You got to put you got to put your team on your shoulders at least for 2 weeks. At least give me a week. Alonso hasn't done it all season. I'm sick and tired of the naysayers, even though there's a hell of a lot more Mets fans that are finally coming around to the nonsense that they have been continuing to shut their eyes on when it comes to Pete Alonso. A lot more Mets fans are actually coming to reality a little bit, and they start digging with the stats. Even SNY is starting to pull stats about Pete Alonso when they never did that earlier in the season. Go back a month ago. They never talked about Pete Alonso's lack of production at runners in scoring position, his padding of the stats, his lack of production in big moments. Right? You see the national media starting to talk about it, SNY talking about it, the writers talking about it, and now the fans are finally starting to come around. Right? I'm not giving a guy $200 million that he's expecting when he never carries this team. Right? I don't want to hear, oh, look what he does in April. Great. Yeah, yes, April matters. Very early in the season. But when it really matters, when you're in the hunt, when you're in a possible playoff position or close to it, these are the games that matter. Right? Everybody loses 60, everybody wins 60. The majority of the teams. The last 42 games of the season is going to determine if you're a playoff team or not. Right? The Padres and Diamondbacks have been on a 3-week hot streak. Right? It's amazing that we're only, 5, 6 games back, 7 games back? We could be 10 games back. Right? The Braves, who haven't been playing well, has passed us. Luckily, the Mets had a little bit of a cushion with the teams behind them, but that's even getting closer now. I'm just looking at the comments, guys. Just give me a second. I just want to see something. Let's see. Yeah, Marcus, I agree about the mental toughness. I've said this for a long time with this team, and I said it in 2022, and I said it last year, right? When they bitched and moaned after the trade deadline, like they weren't the real reasons why Billy Epler and the Mets decided to sell. Like, guys, you have to be better. You have to be better. I don't care what anybody says. David Stearns made solid additions to this team. He revamped this bullpen. He got a starting pitcher in here. He got one of the better bats on the market at the deadline in Jesse Winker. He was one of the better offensive bats that were actually traded during this trade deadline. Like, these are solid additions. Is it a great addition? Great additions? No. Would I give it an A grade? No. I give it probably a C+, maybe even a B-. This isn't Vogelback, Ruff, and Naquin and Givens. It's actually better because you actually got the real needs of this team, right? We saw what high leverage starting pitching was costing. Even top level bullpen was costing a lot, right? So now I don't care about probably I would have done what we had to do, but overall, Stearns got the needs of his team. The biggest need a month ago was bullpen help. He got numerous arms to help out. We're getting reinforcements, right? Nunez will be coming back soon. Foley will be coming back soon. So we got to start somewhere. And it comes back to the offense. The offense we knew needed to carry this team, right? With the pitching, keeping us afloat. Starting pitching kept us afloat early in the season when it was embarrassing, right? Even the bullpen actually kind of leveled out a little bit. Even, right after the All-Star break, it was still, I would say, okay. Like, it wasn't great, but it was still keeping teams in both. Again, the offense haven't been scoring runs. We're one of the worst offensive teams since the All-Star break. And it was games that we can win, right? That Seattle series, if you really pay attention to that game, the series, the first 2 games were winnable. The offense did absolutely nothing. How much do you want Quintana and Minaya and the bullpen to do in those 2 games, right? Game 3 was a disaster from the start, right? It just seemed like they had one foot on the plane already. So the offense, now explosive. I'm not going to say the offense has come back down to earth because I don't think that's fair to what they did to get this team back into relevancy, right? It's just the fact that when you got 3 of your 4 main guys at the top of your order not performing, and it's guys like Pete Alonso, who has dropped back down to the 5th spot, not performing, right? If you had Lindor and somebody else performing at the top of the order, this team would be fine. We'd probably win a couple of more games over this stretch. We might have 63, 64 wins. I'm not saying we're going to have 67, 68 wins, but we could have a couple more wins over this road trip or over this 2-3 week stretch, right? But when you only got Lindor getting his 2 hits, getting his couple of RBIs, and nobody else at the top of the order doing anything, and now you have to rely a lot more on McNeil and Vientos and Bader in the bottom of the order. That's the problem. That is the problem. Your big guys need to be coming through in this last month and a half of the season. You can't rely on the bottom of the order like you would in April, May, and June, like the Mets did, until the offense really started to kick into gear, when the top of the lineup really starts kicking ass. This is the moment, and now the spotlight is on. We talked about the pressure with the team. We talked about the mental toughness of this core. Where is it? Pete Alonso looks like he's checked out. I'm sorry, guys. I've said this over and over again. I don't believe Pete Alonso wants to be here. I think he'd rather get somebody to give him close to $200 million where he ends up in oblivion. He might be ending up on a solid team, a good team, but away from the New York spotlight, and doesn't have to deal with that New York pressure, just the contract pressure, right? We already know in the biggest moments, he folds under pressure regardless of the contract. But now he has the contract on top of trying to carry a team, which he has not done this year. So we've seen him not come through in big moments over the course of a couple of seasons, right? He talks a big game, but when it really matters, he does not perform well in big moments. Yeah, I mean, great guys. I mean, everybody, yeah, great. You might re-sign him. Wonderful. But why is that going to excite me? I've seen a guy who's padded his stats over his last 5.5 seasons, and nobody wants to talk about it. Right? I don't care when the Mets are irrelevant in July, and you're going to tell me about stats and look at his months that he had. Look at the great numbers. I don't care. They come with no pressure. Right? 2019 was a love affair with Pete Alonso. I understood that. I was at a lot of those games. Right? It was great seeing him hit the home run rookie record. Right? But there was no pressure there. Everybody wanted him to come up. Everybody loved him. Right? The pandemic happened. I'm not blaming Alonso for the numbers there. What is he supposed to do there? Right? I throw that season out. 2021, down season. Good numbers, but the Mets were irrelevant. 2022, right? When everybody in your lineup was playing well offensively, it's easy to put up great stats, right? But look at the numbers in September. And Pete Alonso wasn't the only one. But that was where you needed your big boy, your big name guy, and that's including Lindor, by the way, to come through. Right? Marte going down shouldn't have been the downfall of this whole lineup when you had Nimmo, when you had Lindor, when you had Pete Alonso. It shouldn't have been that bad. Because all you had to do was be a couple of more games over 500 and you win the division easily, and that Atlanta series would have never mattered. This lineup, this core, regardless of who you put around them, I'm sick and tired of people that, Pete Alonso has never had protection. Well, why do you care about protection when he was hitting 40-plus home runs anyway? It shouldn't matter, right? If you're supposed to be this predominant power hitter, if you're supposed to be one of, before Lindor, face of the franchise, you were supposed to be that guy. Protection is so overblown, protection. Okay? Here, everybody wants to, there's some people that want to compare Aaron Judge and Pete Alonso. When was the last time Aaron Judge had protection in the Yankees lineup? Ever. Since he's come up. Besides the 2017 season, he never had protection. How is he hitting 300, 40, 50 home runs, 120 plus RBIs every season, even more? That was before he had Juan Soto. And Juan Soto's batting in front of him. They're not even pitching to him. He's putting up amazing numbers. I don't want to hear about the protection. Protection is only relevant when the batter that needs the protection or supposedly needs the protection is actually doing their job. They're not walking Pete Alonso to get to Jesse Winker or a struggling Vientos or a struggling Alvarez. They're pitching to Pete Alonso. He's swinging at garbage again and again. You know when pitchers are afraid of you? When they know that no matter what pitch they throw, you're on it. You're taking that close pitch because you know it's a ball. Pete Alonso don't do that. Pete Alonso is very easily pitched to. That's the issue. I don't remember any pitcher walking Pete Alonso because they're so afraid of him that they'll go to the next guy. And with no protection, it doesn't really matter because you're not afraid of Pete Alonso. Right? If Lindor wasn't so good in the leadoff spot, I'd move him behind Pete Alonso. But you can't even afford to do that because Lindor's been so good at the leadoff spot. That is the downfall of the top of the lineup not performing because now you're relying on the bottom of the order. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. D, I'm not going to go as far as no one's driven, no one cares, because it's hard to say that when no Met fan, a lot of Met fans didn't care, 11 games under 500, and that team did care, and they fought back, right? So I'm not putting them on that level of saying that they don't care. Come on, that's silly. That is silly to say, right? Do I think they have the mental fortitude to make the playoffs? I don't trust this core. I've started to believe in this core a little bit after what they've done and proven to me when they were down in the dumps and fought back. But that was also with no pressure, right? JD Martinez talked about it. The team talked about it openly after the meeting. That nobody believes they're going to win. There's no pressure on them, right? And they just played baseball. But when the spotlight got big, when people started talking about them nationally, when Mets fans started going to Citi Field, when Mets fans started to believe every time they turn on the TV and watch a Met game that the Mets are going to win that game, that's when the pressure mounts. Yeah, I don't think they overachieved. I don't think they are. I think this team is good. Overachieving. Look, I never think they're as hot offensively as they were in June and July, but I don't think they're as cold as this. They're an offense, even when they're not playing well, they should be scoring 4 runs per ball game on average. They're scoring just under 2.5 since the All-Star break, or just under 3. That's not good. D, I wouldn't say they give up after Senga. Like no. They didn't have Senga the whole season. Like, I'm sorry. You can't expect in June and July while you're playing when you had no Senga and you don't even know if his rehab start was going to go good at that point. They were playing without him. I'm sorry. As a professional ball player, you're not expecting somebody to come back from injury and help this team, right? You're not thinking like that as a professional. So, you can't say, oh, well, they gave up after Senga got hurt. Well, what about the other months when they were performing well and got back into the race without that guy? D, it's not a nosedive. You're only talking about the last 4 games. Like, that's not a nosedive. What do I think it is, guys? I just think it's that the problem is the couple of guys at the top of the order get ice cold, right? We talked about this, right? We knew Lindor was going to cool off a little bit. I believed. I knew Nimmo was going to get ice cold because he's done it his whole career, right? People don't want to admit it, but Nimmo has a hot streak and an ice cold streak. He never has an in between. That is a huge problem for a guy that you need at the top of the order, right? JD Martinez basically carried his team in June, in late May into June, right? He hasn't been good. This is the moment for Pete Alonso to carry a team, right? With Lindor still playing at that lukewarm level, right? That's what you want from your offensive player. When you're red hot and, you cool off a little bit, but you're still being productive. Lindor has done that, even not being red hot. When Nimmo ice cold and JD Martinez slumping, this is where Pete Alonso needs to help out Francisco Lindor at the top of the lineup. You can't have 1 out of 4 doing the job. You're not going to win ball games like that. 2 out of the 4, you can survive. You could score some runs. This is the issue. This is why I keep on talking about when things get tough, when the lineup is struggling, when the top of the lineup isn't red hot, and Pete Alonso can hide under the covers and nobody's talking about how bad he was. This is the moment for Pete Alonso. Everybody thought it was going to be in that Seattle series, him carrying the team after his 2 big home runs in Colorado. Where has he been? A lot of 0 for 5s, a lot of 1 for 5 with 3 strikeouts. That's what he's been. Right? And then everybody goes, oh, look at the numbers he put. Well, he ain't putting up numbers this year. His average is close to his career average. The home runs are way down. The RBIs are way down. This is the issue. Yeah, I agree, Marcus. Right? All of a sudden, everybody wants to name Lindor captain when half the fan base couldn't believe that Lindor's still on his team, wants to trade him. Oh, he don't deserve the money. But he's the only one still actually performing at a respectable level, even when he's not red hot. Now everybody wants to name Lindor the captain. Why does Lindor get that burden? Everybody gave it to Pete Alonso 2 years ago. Now everybody wants to hide away from it when that's all we talked about, right? Before the season started, how can you not give Pete Alonso a contract? Things change real quick, isn't it? This is going to be, Chris, you know what? I understand where we can talk about the offseason. I don't care about the offseason. The offseason is irrelevant to me. The offseason doesn't exist yet. We got 42 games to play. We're 2 games out of a wild card, 8 games back of a division with 42 games to play. That's what I care about. That's what I care about. That's the only thing we should be caring about. Right? As bad as the Mets have played, or at least offensively have played since the All-Star break, they're still in it. They could have been dead and buried easily. Luckily, Atlanta hasn't played well up until the last week and a half. Right? We had a good enough cushion from the teams behind us that we still remain the team right behind the third wild card as we were fluctuating back and forth for a little bit. Well, Chris, I don't understand why the franchise doesn't care about the stretch run when they went out and got the needs of this team. Now, was it the big names? No. But we all saw, and even teams, besides the Padres, right? You look at a team like the Yankees, right? They needed a ton of bullpen help. They needed more bats in their lineup other than Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. Josh Tim is a nice player, but could we be honest about him? He's not a very good player. He's all right, right? They didn't do much. They didn't even trade any of their top prospects. So Paul Blackburn is a solid back end of the rotation guy, right? You got bullpen help. You got pretty good bullpen help. Yes, you got a couple of injuries. These guys are going to be coming back. When Nunez comes back and Foley comes back, it's going to be a healthy bullpen. Let's see how they looked in. Chris, they didn't need the big names. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, they didn't. No, they don't. The bigger importance was to get quality players in the spots you needed. That's what you got. You weren't getting Skubal. You weren't getting Flaherty. Did you see the prospects that went in those trades? Look at the bullpen arms and the trades they got. And Patrick, I wouldn't say top end prospect. Spencer Jones is their top end prospect. Could we go easy on that? Come on. They barely gave up anything for Chisholm. Their top 5 prospects are still around. All right. Spencer Jones is their top end prospect. All right, come on. Like, let's be serious about that. The Marlins did a terrible job. And I don't think Josh Chisholm's that good anyway. It's not excuses, Chris. It's not. Because you look at the price. Look, I wouldn't care. I would have went after the big names because I don't care about prospects. All of a sudden, everybody wants to give up prospects when everybody was a prospect hugger. But Chris, they couldn't flex the financial muscle. Teams weren't willing to just give up contracts. If you notice at this deadline, there wasn't a lot of money added on by good teams. Not a ton of money. Teams wanted prospects. But Patrick, no. Media hyped or not, Spencer Jones is their best hitting prospect. Right? He is. Aaron Judge had strikeout problems in the minor leagues. He was their best hitting prospect. All right? Spencer Jones is their best hitting prospect. Chris, again, I agree with you. But teams weren't willing just to give a bad contract to take back less prospects. That's the issue. Just because the Mets, we don't know if the Mets were willing to take on the bad contracts. I think they were. But teams weren't doing it because we didn't see nobody else do it. Even teams with a ton of money weren't taking on bad contracts. There was a ton of teams that could have took on Javi Baez or other bad contracts to get the player that they needed from a team to give less prospects. But teams wanted the prospects. That's the problem. Chris, I'm comparing it to the Yankees because the Yankees, who are in a better spot than the Mets, had a mediocre deadline. Sorry, Mark Leiter is not that good. Chisholm is an okay player, but they got him knowing that he's not going to play his normal position. Now, he's been pretty decent at third base, but he's not at third base, and they're putting him in spots that he doesn't belong. That is the issue. That's why I was comparing. Because I compare a team and look at trade deadlines with teams that are in better positions than the Mets and how did they do. The Baltimore Orioles, did they really get a lot of their needs? They've been struggling. They've been struggling since the deadline. They haven't been great. They could have buried the Yankees when the Yankees weren't playing well. They played just as bad as the Yankees. The fact of the matter is, but easy, I agree with you. I agree nobody was going to take on Baez. But that is the point I'm trying to make with Chris. Like, you could add all the bad contracts you want. If teams are not willing to give up a bad contract to save money, to take on less prospects, the Mets couldn't do anything unless you're willing to give up top prospects. Now, in my opinion, I do it. I would try to get Flaherty and give up a couple of top prospects. Maybe even a Skubal. But look at the players that weren't. Crochet wasn't even dealt on a bad White Sox team that could have traded them easily, but didn't. That is the issue, right? We keep on talking about, the Mets could have took on bad contracts, but if that team is not willing to just give the bad contract to you for one of their better players, they want prospects back. You're not taking bad contract and giving up prospects. You're not doing both. So if the other team is not willing to just give you the bad contract and take on the good player, then what are they going to do except giving up big prospects? But I'm sorry, even teams in better spots than the Mets weren't giving up top prospects. Besides the Padres giving up top prospects for basically every player that they got, around the league, top prospects weren't really given big packages for a lot of good pitchers or a lot of good hitters. It wasn't as big as I thought it was going to happen. I thought a lot of teams were going for it. Can you really tell me the Orioles went for it or the Yankees went for it? The only team that really went for it big time was the Padres. They didn't give a shit about prospects. Other than that, look at the trade deadline. Look, Crochet, everybody thought was going to be gone. He ended up staying with the White Sox. That was one thing I thought he was definitely going. Nobody was willing to give up the capital of prospects. So why should the Mets? We just say, why didn't the Mets just do that? Look, I would. People don't understand that. People think that I'm trying to say, I'm not going to give it up. I'd give them up. I'm sick and tired of wasting seasons. When you have an opportunity to make the playoffs, you should go all out. I'm sick and tired of this half-ass deadlines or lackluster. I don't think Stearns half-assed the deadline because he did get the needs of this team. But who did you want? That's the issue. Yeah, but Chris, you can't look at it that way because the trade deadline, the Mets didn't really have to develop these guys. These guys are already top prospects. That's the difference. It's not about develop, right? We can talk, all right, Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, Mark Vientos, Francisco Alvarez. Isn't that a lot of the top prospects over the last 4 or 5 years? Right? Whatever you think of them, those are successful prospects. No, Chris, I'm not talking about every other season. I am talking about this season. But you can't talk about a core and not talk about their history, right? Well, D, 4 losses in a row isn't all you need to know about this team. It's 4 losses in a row. 3 of those losses have come on an end on a long West Coast trip, on a very odd trip. Now, again, that's not an excuse, but it's reality. We knew that Seattle series was going to be probably the toughest series this team had to face when they're ending their road trip. That was a tough series, right? They should have pulled out at least one of those games. They didn't. Now that they come back home, listen, there's no excuses. They better win this series against the Athletics. They better win this series against the Marlins. Look, would I like them to win the next 5 games against the A's and the Marlins, sweep the Marlins and take the next 2 up from the Athletics? Absolutely. Am I going to be excited that they took the last 5 games, the next 5 games? I wouldn't say excited, but it should be the case. Is 4-2 in this 6-game stretch with the Athletics and the Marlins okay? Yes. Is it good enough? Probably not. They need to go 5-1 in this 6 game, and they got to win the next 5. Like, that's the way I'm looking at it. It's a disaster if they don't. I wouldn't call it a disaster. That's not fair. But they can't lose a series against the A's. You can't lose a series against the Marlins. Even though the Orioles haven't been playing great baseball, they're one of the better teams in the American League or in baseball. So, and then after the Baltimore series, you go back on the road, you face an Arizona and the Padres who are in front of you. Chris, they might. Yeah, easy. That's the funny thing, right? The only team on the 500 that the Mets actually played well against has been the Nationals. And you know what? It's not just the Mets, by the way. Like, I mean, the Yankees lost, 12-2 the other day against the White Sox. Like, a lot of good teams aren't beating up on the – like, the Phillies early on in the season were beating up on a lot of the bad teams. Look around the league. The A's are beating up on the Phillies, the Mets, the Yankees. Like, it's crazy to me. Like, a lot of these bad teams are playing good against good teams, which is odd. Look, Chris, if they go 4-5 in this homestand, they're in trouble. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Yeah, Chris, I understand that. But again, that doesn't stop them from losing bad teams. They have. The Phillies have done that over the last 2 months. Over the last month. Yankees, same thing. I know they're 20 games over 500, but they won a lot of games early on. Right? If you really look at it, how long did it take the Phillies and the Yankees, who were basically at 50 wins before you can even blink an eye, to finally get in the 70 wins? It took them a long time to get to 70 wins because they didn't play well. Yeah, Daniel, the A's have been playing better, but they're still not a good team. Right? The A's have been playing better against better teams. But again, this is where we have to talk about. Chris, I understand that. That's not news breaking. But the fact is, the Mets got to play better. That's it. That is it. Right? You can't sugarcoat what this homestand means to the Mets. Now, could they have a 4-5 road trip like homestand, like Chris said, and go out and beat up on the Diamondbacks and Padres? They done it this year. At the moment, they still got the lead in season series. Could they do that? Sure. They could shock the hell out of us. Go to the West Coast and beat up on Arizona and the Padres, and they come back home in September, and we're like, oh, shit, look at this. Is it possible? Yes. Easy, it sounds like a silly comment, but it's true. Like, I laughed at that comment, but then I'm like, yeah, you're right, which is crazy. But their offense is scary. Their offense is pretty decent, but it's still no excuse for the New York Mets. They got to win this series. I don't care how you do it. Like, come on, guys, let's go. Alonso, step the fuck up for a week, please. Nimmo, wake up. Are you going to blame You're not getting any sleep because your wife is pregnant? Great news for your family. But step up. Let's go. JD Martinez, let's go. Help Lindor out. Lindor is the only one that's been lukewarm after the red hot. Help him out. Let's get some damn runs. Sick and tired of talking about the same shit with this core. I get rid of half the freaking core. We can't get rid of Nimmo. Right? You know, McNeil has been better. Alonso has been a joke. Let's get it. Let's start winning games. Yeah, Daniel, again, Alonso has been, but is that really saying something about Alonso? Nimmo has been ice cold. I've talked about Alvarez a lot early on. The fact is, like, saying that Alonso has been better than Nimmo is kind of laughable because Nimmo has been terrible. Pete has been okay, but I keep on going back. We can't have Pete Alonso be okay. He's been okay all season. Where is elite Pete Alonso? Give me a week. Give me 20 games where you can't get Alonso out. That would help. Haven't seen it. Right? I talked about Alonso and Alvarez. They were projected for this lineup to hit around 60 plus home runs. Maybe around 65 to 70 home runs combined. We'll be lucky if they hit 45 combined. That's a problem. Look, it starts with tonight. It starts with David Peterson on the mound. You can talk about this lineup all you want. I don't give a shit about 6-2-9. If 1 through 4 don't do their job, there's a pretty good chance that 6-2-9 is not going to win you enough, not going to score you enough runs to win a ball game. Step up. Pete Alonso, prove me wrong. Prove Mets fans that are finally looking at reality about you. Prove us wrong. Carry this team for 2 weeks. Where is it? Because I haven't seen it throughout your fucking career. I'm sick and tired of Mets fans still defending this guy. He has been terrible in his career in big moments. And I'm not talking about big moments when runners are on base and the Mets are 20 games out of a playoff spot. I don't give a shit about that. September 2022. Last year, before the deadline, when the players claimed that they were still in the race, did not step up. This year, it's been Lindor, it's been Nimmo, it's been Martinez, it's been Vientos carrying this team at any moment during the season. Alonso, nothing this year. Alvarez, nothing this year. 2 guys that everybody couldn't wait to see. Oh, no. Get it done. Get it done. Yeah, Pete came through. Wasn't it a blowout? Congratulations, you get a golf clap. That's when he gets his RBIs. That's when he hits his home runs. Step up, Pete. Prove me wrong. I'd love to come on here next week and Pete Alonso is carrying his team. Shut me the hell up. But you haven't shut me up all season. You haven't shut me up in 3 years. Stop acting like you are one of the better players. You're one of the top players in baseball. You're not. You're not even a pronounced home run hitter this year. There's a pretty good chance that Lindor might have more home runs than you. That's how bad you've been. So get it done. No more excuses for Pete. I look at his stat line. You see when those hits came? Wasn't it 7-1? Wasn't it 9-2? Like, come on. How about coming up in the first inning and hitting one over the wall and giving his team a lead early on? Right? You're batting 5th. Maybe you won't come up in the first inning. But you had a lot of opportunities to do it when you were batting 3 or 4. How about coming up and making a difference in a ball game? And don't give me the thin air of Colorado where everybody thought Pete Alonso was back and he shows up in Seattle and drinks coffee and sits down and watches his team fall apart. Pete Alonso, I'm calling you out once again. The pressure is on you. Good. It should be. You want $200 million? Prove that you deserve it over these next 42 games. Because a lot of heads will turn if you do it in the next 42 games. Nobody will give a shit the prior 120 games. If you come through in the biggest games of the year for your team, maybe we'll talk a little different about you. But I'm not doing it yet. Prove it. The Mets play the A's tonight. We got about 15 minutes until game time. David Peterson on the mound. Joey Estes for the A's. The lineup, Lindor, Nimmo, Martinez, Winker, Alonso, McNeil, Vientos, Gamel, and Alvarez. Get it done. You got to win today by any means necessary. I don't care who does it. Just win. I want it to be the top of the order. But do I trust them? No. I damn sure don't trust Pete Alonso. I've got killed for it for 2 years now, probably 3. I don't trust him. You can trust him all you want. Nimmo has been ice cold. Hasn't even been mediocre. He needs to step up. For all the killing Lindor got, ever since he's been red hot, he's still been lukewarm, getting his 2 hits a game. He was the only one that hit in Seattle. He had, 5 for 15? He actually hit something. Nobody else did. He's actually been lukewarm after he's been red hot. But nobody else is helping him at the top of the order. If your 2 through 4 isn't driving him in, what the hell is him being on base good for? The fact of the matter is, this core needs to step up. Nimmo, wake up. Alonso, hello. The season started 120 games ago. Get it done. Prove me wrong and prove a lot of there's a couple of us that actually have been criticizing you for more than a month. Get it done. Prove us wrong. I love you for you to shut me up. I want egg on my face. I want Met fans and you guys in the chat to come at me when Alonso's batting .350, having 15 home runs over a 3-4 week stretch. I'd love that. Because I know it's helping the Mets. I want to see it from Pete Alonso. Pete, take over a game. This is where your team needs you most. When the offense is struggling, when the top of the lineup, besides Lindor, hasn't been doing the job, you are one of, if not one of the main run producers of your team. Get it done. I don't care how you do it. Get it done. With that said, guys, enjoy the game tonight. David Peterson on the mound against Joey Estes. Mets 2 games out of a wild card spot behind Atlanta. 8 games out of a division. I'm just bringing it up because it's been around 6 to 8 games for 2 weeks now, even when the Mets playing not good. So with that said, enjoy the game. I'll see you tomorrow for a Mets pregame and probably a post. With that said, guys, everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. Step up Alonso. Step up Nimmo. Let's get a win. Let's get back. Let's get out of this losing streak. Get back in the win column. And let's talk about a win tomorrow and going for the series against the Oakland Athletics. Everybody have a great night. Let's go Mets. And maybe the good luck hat is back, guys. I'll see you next time, guys. Have a great night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets